We are going to talk about the importance of storytelling and why storytelling is critical for any business, whether it's a startup, whether it is an established business. And more so for startups, because you all are, if you're part of startup industry, if you're part of any startups, you're all competing with legacy businesses, you're competing with other startups for largely the same share of wallet. And customer today is extremely fickle. Customer loyalty is no longer really existing. And amidst all of that and the wonderful terms that Rahul just shared with all of you, how do you understand why is storytelling important? What is the purpose of storytelling? And when does storytelling become part of your culture? When does it move away from being something that you do as part of viral meme campaigns or as a flash in the pan ad hoc things? And when it becomes part of your culture, when it becomes the part of your purpose, and therefore what's the impact that it has? So that's what we are going to talk about. We are looking to keep this as interactive as possible. So Preeta has a few questions, and then we'd love to hear from all of you. Any questions, anything that you all want to know about, happy to answer. So want to keep this interactive. Quick background, I've been in the business of storytelling for now almost 25 years. I've worked with legacy industries, startups. You all would have heard the name CRED. I used to lead communication and brand for CRED. Currently, I lead employer brand and communication for RPG Enterprises. We are a $5.2 billion conglomerate with very legacy businesses that have no direct consumer, but still as a brand looking to build how we can do our storytelling more effective. So that's a little bit about me. Preeta, over to you.
Thank you, Sunena. This is the advantage when you have a storyteller as your speaker. You don't have to really then do a lot of work of moderating a session. The speaker will do it all by themselves. Thank you very much for setting the context. You really helped us save on time. So I'm going to straight jump into the questions that we have for you, Sunena. And by the way, my name is Pritha Dubey. Since you've already said that storytelling is important for a brand, so my question will be, and that for all the brands sitting here, how many of you are keen on making a brand reputation, a brand recognition for your organization? Can I see a raise of hand, please? All right. So I'm sure this is a question that you will resonate with if I ask you that is storytelling only the responsibility of a brand owner?
Interesting question. Storytelling, actually, I want to move away from this word of storytelling, because what we are really talking about is the reason why a brand or a business exists. There is a very famous neuroscientist and psychologist called Viktor Frankl, and he's written a book called Man's Search for Meaning. And a statement in that book says that if a man knows his why, he will find the how to achieve that why. And that statement is as true for people as it is true for any brands or any organizations. Any organization, any industry, company, product, if you know your why and why your business exists, you will find the how to make that business exist and be successful. And that why is the story, that why is the emotion that will resonate with whoever you are selling to. Which is the reason why there are brands and products and companies that you all would know of. If you only sell a product to a customer, your relationship with that customer is very, very transactional. And therefore, you can't expect loyalty, you can't expect any endorsement from that customer, whether in times of crisis, whether in times of peace or war. But when brands don't sell a product, when they sell a emotional connect, when they sell a story, a culture that resonates with your consumer, then then you're building a company or a brand which consumers will vouch for. That's when your consumers become your brand ambassadors. And that will happen when everybody who's part of the organization understands the why, understands the purpose. Because if your purpose, for example, if you are, let's say, you are a banana chips company, for example. If your purpose is to sell banana chips, then you're competing with Lay's, you're competing with other banana chips brands, and you're competing with anybody and any other snack brand. But if you have a larger purpose and everybody in your organization understands that the banana chips is a product, but what we are really doing is that we are working with a set of farmers and how it impacts their lives, how you are creating a product which talks about what goes inside the product on the label. So you're also trying to build a healthier eating habit for your consumer. Then you automatically are talking to a consumer at a much more, at a deeper connection level than telling him or her that this is a product I'm selling. And that understanding of why we are there for what we are doing for our consumer needs to come from every department, every part of the organization. Your sales teams need to understand that, your marketing team needs to understand that, your leadership needs to understand that, the people that you hire, your HR teams need to understand that. So to your question, I think the purpose, why a brand exists, the culture of, when that purpose becomes a culture, everybody who's part of an organization is an equal custodian of that culture, and it cannot be the responsibility of just one person or the CEO or one entity.
So you're saying that it needs to kind of blend with the culture of the organization, of the business.
So the most authentic storytelling is your culture. So I know how many of you know of this brand called Patagonia. It's a brand from US, and they are extremely clear about what they sell. The product that they sell might be jackets and all, but their communication about being sustainable and doing good to the environment far surpasses the product that they sell. And that's their culture. And which is why authenticity in culture is very difficult to build. But once you build it, it's your consumers, and not just your consumer, every stakeholder of yours will see this. You all must have heard this example multiple times, so I may be repeating this, but the association, so there's something called when you do storytelling or when you're talking about brand building, there's something called as muscle memory. What is your brand's muscle memory? When people think of your brand, what do they think? And to give you an example, even today, even after all the challenges, everything that they have gone through, even now largely, when you think of the brand Tata's, trust is one of the first things or the top 3 things that comes to your mind. Have they not been in crisis? They have been. Have they not been in situations which were not very favorable? Have they not had instances where they faced the ire of the customers? They have. But despite that, for over 200 plus years, that the brand has been constantly investing in building a culture of trust. And that trust, and how that trust translates into their story, into their communication for their people, for their consumers, for the stakeholder universe that they interact with, whether it is government, whether it is regulator, has been a constant exercise. And that is what pays dividends after a period of time. So culture, when culture becomes your story, when culture becomes your why, your purpose, then you don't see this in the short term. You see this that I'm building a brand for the next 100 years. And in 100 years later, also, what would be the muscle memory that my consumers, my audience, needs to have with my brand?
So that is why the businesses need to map their cultures?
Absolutely. I think, and also I would like to add here that authenticity in knowing what your culture, what your why is, and how that why has to become your purpose and your culture is very important. You can ride on trends, you can ride on something that's a fad, but unless it is authentic, it will never become culture. And despite everything around, it is not very difficult to immediately understand when a narrative is authentic and when a narrative is not authentic. You also have to invest in building multiple legs around your narrative, but the authenticity in what you are saying and the authenticity in what you are building has to be there. You cannot story tell. You can story tell a fake narrative, but it won't carry you much longer. And the repercussions of when your consumers, when your audience understand that this was a fake narrative is far more severe, and the damage to the reputation is then unrecoverable from.
So Naina, you spoke about that there are a lot of trends and fads, and it's very easy for startups and businesses when we are just starting to kind of get influenced by these trends or the fads that we are seeing around us, because we have been looking up to a certain brand and we have seen the growth of certain brands, and maybe we are in the same line of business, and then we feel like if they have done it this way and they are doing, and this is how they're storytelling their brand or story selling their brand, then this might be working. So why not me also try and follow this? So a quick note to the founders and the business owners sitting here: how can we as founders, we can not get trapped into those trends and actually build ourselves as those cultural architects?
I think I'll go back to the starting point of this. If you're in an early stage of building a brand, or even if you're at a stage where you feel that you have a strong brand, it's very important to do something called as a brand voice exercise. With your, and you will find a lot of coaches who will help you do that. It's very important to understand what's your brand's personality and what's your brand voice. It's important to give a human entity, a human persona to your brand. That deep exercise with your larger organization, your team members, will help you understand what your brand stands for. For example, if you were to think of a brand which is, I'll give you an example. There is Ryanair in US. It's a low-cost carrier. The brand voice or the brand personality of Ryanair is somebody who's very irreverent, who's very cheeky, and they tend to be very sarcastic. They tend to faff around with their, in their communication. Doesn't mean it's not a serious business, but that's the brand personality that they have built to be able to communicate what they do. On the other hand, there are brands which have built a very different brand voice and a brand personality. So for every brand, you will find your own brand voice and your own brand personality. And if you're able to humanize that brand personality, like your brand personality may be a mix of George Clooney, Beyonce, and maybe somebody else. But it's important to understand that what does my brand stand for? What is my brand personality? If I was to humanize my brand, what would be the human form of my brand? That will tell you that if I'm a brand that doesn't follow trends, but I'm a brand that wants to set trends, then your marketing team will know that viral memes is not something we ride on, but we will set our own trends. But if your brand has a different personality, your marketing team, your sales team will understand. And this gets reflected not just in Instagram reels or YouTube shorts. This gets reflected in how you create your entire brand architecture. How are customers seeing your brand? That gets reflected in the kind of materials that collaterals that you're creating for your brand. What does your brand book look like? What does your font size look like? What does the font type that you use look like? When you're creating a brochure, when you're creating any physical communication, what does it look like? What does your brand language look like? Are you a brand that wants to apologize? There are brands in service industry that have taken a conscious stance that they will never apologize. So when they communicate to their customers, even if it's an error, you will not find the words of apology in that brand. So you have to arrive, and this is an exercise which is very important to do, which will help you construct that this is what my brand is, this is my brand voice, this is my brand's personality, and have the entire organization buy into that, so that every touch point of the brand with any audience, whether it is a consumer or anyone else, stays true to that brand voice and that brand personality. And that will make, frankly, for marketing people, life is easier, because then your guardrails are very well defined for you. I hope that answers.
Yes, it does. And it reminds, because I come from a sales background, and our job is to ensure that the revenue of the business is consistent and it's growing. And something that we always keep saying is that end of the day, your buyers, your customers are emotional beings. So till the time they are not able to emotionally connect with your brand, it's very difficult for them to, the muscle memory that you are saying, like if we are walking in, when Starbucks decided to give coffee, end of the day, they decided to just give coffee. But it's not just the coffee that people walk into a Starbucks for. They created an entire story that resonated with a certain section of their audience, and they were able to emotionally connect with that story. And that is what they walk into a Starbucks for, and that is what we call as selling value. And if that emotional, and this is, I think, when by personality, that is what you're trying to say, that humanize your brand, so that when someone hears, your customer hears your brand, some or the other emotions come to the top of their mind. That either it will be sophistication, either it will be noble, either it will be something like trust, integrity, something of that, some kind of an emotion should get connected with that, right?
No, absolutely. And that also will tell you who are you associating with for your brand. So if you, and to your point about viral trends and all, if the influencer network or the trends that you see don't go with your brand value, you will also have the clarity that we might miss out on a viral trend, but that's not a brand personality. So for example, a Starbucks or a third wave perhaps in India may never associate with anything that's very mass market. Because while the coffee that they sell might not be the most expensive coffee, the brand voice or the brand personality of maybe a third wave is something which is aspirational. It is for a young techie crowd. So, and that's their brand personality, that's their brand look and feel, what you see, how the baristas talk to you at the coffee shop. So they may not associate with any influencer or trend which is maybe very mass market or targeted at a much larger audience, because that's not the audience base that they are going for. And what's also important is to revisit this exercise at certain stages of the life of your brand, because it's a great thing if you can stay true to the core purpose of your brand. But as businesses grow, as brands evolve, you may also want to relook at this exercise at some point in time to see that are we still selling, are we still talking to the same set of consumers, or has our consumer ecosystem evolve. But at the core of it, if there's one thing I can't overstress, especially in this age where every third word is AI or agentic AI or Gen AI or some technology or this technology, we are still selling to humans. You're still talking to humans. People who are taking the decision to buy into your story, buy into your product, people who are taking decisions which will impact whether you can run a business or not run a business, people who may become your naysayers. Rahul, I think, spoke about NPS, whether they become your detractors or promoters. The core in all of this is that they are still people. And you have to be able to understand that as of now, and I think for the next few years, we are still going to be talking to people. People connect to people, people connect to brands at an emotional level. Sometimes it is conscious, sometimes it is very unconscious. But you connect to a brand, the emotions that a brand evokes in you is still at a very human level, which is why when you open one e-commerce platform website versus another e-commerce platform website, your brain has already made a certain perception about trust on the product, quality of the product, service delivery, without the brand having even said a word to you, because the interaction is happening on your mobile screen. So when you build your story, please always remember that you're talking to people. And people will connect at an emotional level. People will connect at a human level. So authenticity in your storytelling is what will make your brands become and also develop a more human relationship with your consumer and your audience versus a very transactional one.
So I think the key takeaway from this discussion that is happening, I think point number one is you're selling to human. So remember that you are a human, you're selling to human. And authenticity, the second word that is coming to the mind, that whenever you're presenting your brand, make sure that your audience is able to distinguish between a bot or an AI versus an authentic human-driven brand that is happening. And since we're talking about people-to-people connect, we shouldn't let, if Sunaina's presence is here and we have the opportunity, so I'm going to leave the room open for 5 minutes, whatever number of questions we can take in that 5 minutes. If anyone at this point wants to take an opportunity to ask a very specific, their brand related question in terms of storytelling or story selling or how to imbibe culture into the entire thing, the floor is open to you right now. Anyone who wants to take you please raise your hand. Yes, and you will take this mic?
Hello, my name is Gautam. I come from Kannur. I work with weaving societies in Kannur to build a brand that is working directly with the weaving societies and taking their crafts to the whole of India, because we've seen that quite a bit of brands take handloom fabric, sell it for quite a huge margin, but they never give the credits to our societies. So we're trying to change the narrative where every time you purchase from us, you get to know exactly where you've bought the product from. The fabric is from Payanur Khadi Center. This is from Chirakal Weaving Society. Every time you get it there and then with the product. So the problem here is there are a lot of people telling the same story. So when everybody says the same story, what can you do to differentiate yourself? Because it is not just a me problem, because everybody is trying to tell the story, and storytelling has become a huge fad at this point, very honestly. So how do you stand out? What do you do? Is a question I'd love to know.
Very interesting question.
I don't know enough about the business that you're in to give you that answer, but I think I would urge you to do this brand exercise, understanding what your brand stands for and finding the brand voice that your brand stands for, and then trying to understand how is it that you can communicate it more authentically. So, for example, if it's the local artisans that you work with, and if they are the hero or if they are the narrators of that story, I would probably get them front and center and get the world to see that you're not buying a khadi t-shirt. or a khadi shirt or a linen pants or whatever you said. You're not just buying a piece of clothing. These are the people who are making that product, and that authenticity comes because if they are the ones who are the narrators of that story, because they're also the creators of the product, that narrative needs to come forward more strongly. So, and it takes time. I know it feels very impatient, but it takes time. So I'll give you an example. There's this brand, a not-for-profit brand out of Gujarat, which was started by Mrs. Ila Bhatt, called Seva. Seva works with the Kutch women with their, the embroidery and the work that the women do. For the longest period of time, and again, that's a product which is very commoditized as well. You will find it in all flea markets across the country. For the longest time, the women felt that they never got their due as artisans who were actually creating this. And then Seva took a decision that every time they were presenting at any show, any fashion event in India or globally, the women who actually made the embroidery were part of the whole process. They were the ones who were getting to talk to, they were the ones, some of them would be on the ramp, they would be there as part of the selling process, they would be there as part of creating the workshops, because they are the ones who truly, literally give their blood to the fabric that's, the embroidery that they're creating. And it took a bit of time, but then for people to understand where does the Kutch embroidery comes from, and these are the people who are doing this, and for them to see value, it happened. So it takes time, it won't happen overnight, and which is why I said that virality can get you maybe a little bit, but then you will as easily be forgotten as well. So have a little bit of patience, do a deep think with the people that you work with on what truly is that your brand stands for, what truly is your brand's voice, and then invest in building that over a period of time. If you're authentic, you will find resonance with your audience.
Thank you, Sunaina. One word answer for you. Do a unique value proposition exercise. You will find the answer and you will exactly know how to tell the story, okay? You want to know more about it, connect with us after this. Thank you very much. I am sorry we will not be able to take any more questions. It seems the organizers don't want to deprive you of the other interesting discussions that are going to come your way, and neither are we going to come in between your learning and the other speakers. So thank you very much for your time and for listening to it. You have questions, please, Sunaina is here. Flock her, ask all your questions. She'll be more than happy to answer your questions. Thank you very much, Sunaina, for this very, very detailed and such a heartfelt sharing of knowledge. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Preeta.